Today I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what you do when you want to try and find your own counselor. I've had people ask me this question over the years, whether or not that's because they're moving to a new city and they want to find a counselor that they feel good with, or because I get a lot of questions from family and friends about how you seek out looking for a counselor that's good for you. So stay tuned, and I'm going to break down some of the things that you need to think about and what to look for when you're looking for your own therapist. So let's talk about how to choose a counselor. The first thing that you should really think about with your match is whether or not you find yourself comfortable with the person that you're working with and you think that the two of you are a good fit. The biggest thing to understand is that the best work you're ever going to do as a counselor is going to be based on how comfortable you feel with them. So if you don't feel comfortable with the person, it's not going to be as therapeutic as you want it to be. Even if they have all of the skills and all of the training and all of these fancy things, if you don't feel good with them, you're not going to have as great an experience as you want. The second thing that I would really point out is that any decent counselor is going to offer a free consultation for you, which really means that you should be able to, at the very least, talk on the phone with somebody and get a sense of what kind of person they are by talking. Many counselors still offer in-person consultations, but obviously right now, during what's going on, you're going to see that most often people are going to either provide them over the phone or over the internet to talk to you. There are two questions that I think you should consider when you want to talk to a therapist. And they're the two biggest ones that are fundamentally going to tell you whether or not you're a good fit for this person. And the first one is, do I feel that this person really hears me or sees me for who I am? And that might sound like a funny thing, but the reality is that when you spend time in that person's presence, what you should feel is a sense of acceptance from them. And if you only feel judgment, or you feel like they've got their walls up, or that they're not being authentic with you, that might be a problem. And what you really want is to have a sense that you have felt seen and heard in some sort of way by this person. And that's how you know you're going to do good work. The second one that I want to point out is you might find that meeting with somebody for the first time is very anxiety provoking, but at the same time, there should be some part of you on the inside that feels a little bit excited, or that maybe you want to go back for therapy. And that's usually an indication that you found somebody who's a good fit for you, because you're feeling hopeful that something may come out of this. And if you have that sense that, like, maybe I want to do some more work with this person, that's probably a good thing. And you should probably feel that before you make the decision to go with a specific counselor. There's a remaining list of things that you should kind of consider when you're thinking about working with a counselor. And there's a number of things that counselors should basically probably always do that will help you understand whether or not you think they're an effective or competent counselor. And I'll give you some examples of what these are. In the description below, I'll try and put a list of an exhaustive list of all of these things, so you have some things to kind of look at if you're looking for a counselor. So some examples are, they should believe you. That's a big one. That's really important, because if you're coming in and telling your story, you want the person you're working with to believe the things that you're telling them. You want them to be able to share information about the process of counseling and how change happens and occurs, so that you feel safe in the way that you're doing the things that you're doing. You want to feel that they fully respect your feelings, beliefs, and values. You want to feel that they acknowledge your gender, your cultural background, or your religious beliefs. You want to feel that they encourage you to do things that you feel are helpful in your healing journey. If they're not on board with the way that you feel that there are certain things that work for you, they're probably not going to be a good fit for you. You want a counselor who's going to encourage you to build support outside of counseling with respectful people and respectful groups. This person should also offer you a certain amount of new skills to help you move forward. One of the things I like to point out with this, though, is that there's going to be people who have orientations that are specific or slightly different. And one of the things that I've noticed is that some counselors work from a certain framework. And you might notice that, like, if you're a much more scientific person, then you really care about somebody who knows their research. So then maybe you want to go with somebody like that. Other people are much more about, like, what can you teach me that I can do? Then maybe you want to go with somebody who's more like that. There are other people who would rather sit and talk to somebody and not get a lot of feedback, but have a sounding board to bounce ideas off of. You really want to think about what it is that you want your counselor to be doing for you and what that setup is going to look like. You want somebody who's going to invite feedback regarding the way in which they do their counseling. So one of the things I often say to my clients is, I need to know if something doesn't feel right for you. And I make a pretty intense stance around making sure that they understand that they're allowed to bring me information whenever they need to, and they need to tell me when something doesn't work for them. Make it easy for you to discuss any questions or concerns you have about counseling. Again, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. Not force or pressure you into doing anything that you don't want to do. So again, it's your therapy, you're in charge of it. They may have an idea or an opinion about how it should go, but they should also be open to hearing what you have to say. And they should be in a place where they can collaborate and compromise with you. Also assist you in deciding when counseling is over. So this is always kind of a touchy subject sometimes with people. And I don't mean with the counselors so much. I think people overestimate how much counselors want to help somebody if they want to end counseling, because it's not about us, it's about you. So whatever you want to do, we should be good with. But they should be open to being able to answer any questions and help guide you through that process. And again, you should be feeling like you can ask them any questions that you need to, even if it feels uncomfortable, because we talk about a lot of weird stuff in counseling and we have a lot of uncomfortable conversations. You need to be able to feel comfortable having those conversations with your counselor. So let's talk about the shopping around process, because this is the part where people get really confused. So the problem is that usually when we're looking for a counselor, we're usually already in crisis. So we have a really hard time making sense of how to actually do this process. And it also when we're in crisis, it's harder for us to problem solve really well and to work through all the different layers of uncertainty and chaos that are happening for us. So let me break it down for you. There are two things you really need to know. One is ways to find them. The second is, what the heck is sliding scale? So those are two really, really important pieces for you to be aware of. So the first, with ways to find them, is that there's often word of mouth. You can talk to people that you know and see if anyone knows of a therapist. But again, some people are, want to keep their mouth pretty closed about the fact that they're seeing somebody in mental health. And that makes it really, really difficult sometimes. So, there are a couple ways of going about that. One could be talking to a friend, obviously. Another could be talking to your doctor. Doctors tend to get a lot of information from people who work in the community who are looking for clients, and then they send information to physicians, knowing that physicians make referrals. So that might be one way that you can find out about people. Sometimes also, if you're affiliated with some sort of religious sect, like a pastor, a rabbi, a minister, somebody like that can also make a recommendation in some cases. You might also find them through a lot of professional listings. So this might sound really funny, but a lot of the professional associations have spots for you to be able to go and look them up. So for example, the College of Psychologists of Ontario, the CPO, they have their own website, and they're going to have a list of people. The CCPA, which is the Counseling and Psychotherapy Association of Canada. I can't even remember all the acronyms, but there's a bunch of different types of associations that are associated with all of these different professions that do have listings of all of the people that are registered with them. So I will also put a few of those links down below in my description so that you can find some of that information there, because there's a lot of them, and I will just give you a handful of different things, and you can Google the rest of them. Also, one of the things that I find happens a lot is psychology today, especially in Kingston, has really blown up, and it's become a really good way for people to find quality people. And really and truly, people put a lot of information up about what they do and what types of individuals they work with and what type of work they do. And it's a good way to narrow down the process to like maybe 3 or 4 people, and then you can go through and you can start making phone calls. And usually once you start doing that and you start talking to people and they get an idea of what your situation is and what you're going through, they may actually know somebody who might be a really good fit for you. And the thing you need to understand is that therapists are very open to trying to find people the right fit, because we all know that you're going to do your best work with somebody you work well with. And we're not all trying to fight to get clients. We all want to help each other, which I know might sound weird, but that's the way that we work. So you should never feel any kind of sense of being afraid that we're, trying to get each other's clients or something like that, because it's not a thing that happens. Not very often anyway. Yes. The other thing to think about is some extended healthcare plans only insure certain types of therapists or counselors. And so sometimes your third-party insurance plan might have a list of people that they insure within your particular location. So that might be something to also think about reaching out to your insurance plan about, in case you have questions about that. How to understand what everybody's acronyms mean or what everybody's letters mean at the end of each person's name, and how those associations all fit and how all of that works is a whole other video. And if you guys want to know about that, please, by all means, write down in the comments what you'd like to see, and I will be sure to explain how all of the licensing and associations in Ontario work. Okay, and lastly, sliding scale. Now, this is really important because not all of us have a lot of money to spend on counseling. If you have a third-party insurance plan that covers counseling, that's awesome, but there's a lot of insurance plans that don't. So one of the things that you could ask if you are looking for counseling on a budget is to ask your potential therapist if they offer sliding scale. And if they do, they can kind of let you know what the range is in terms of what they are charging. And if you need sliding scale, it's basically in our best interest and usually part of our ethical guidelines with our colleges to make sure that we are offering a certain number of sliding scale positions. Every therapist kind of has to take that with a grain of salt, because we all have to know what we need to, how many we can take on in order to balance our books and make enough money to survive. But we all try to offer a certain amount of sliding scale appointments for clients that need it, because it's unethical to take on a client and then them not be able to afford coming for counseling. And so it's really important that we offer that. The last thing I want to bring up is really just how to go about asking questions of a potential therapist, and what kind of questions do you want to ask. So the first thing I would point out is that it's really important to make a list if you're going to, say, have a meeting with somebody or you're going to have a phone call with someone, just so that you have an idea of what kinds of things you actually do want to ask. So I have a few questions here. I'm just going to kind of rhyme them off for you guys. Again, I can put this down in the description if that would be helpful, but I'll give you some ideas. So some things that you might want to ask a therapist are things like, what is your training? And they should be able to give you a pretty good answer around this. You might not know what kind of training you expect. Most people are usually at a master's level, I would say, at the very least. But depending on how much experience somebody has, that really doesn't matter. But they should be able to give you a pretty good answer around what types of training they've done that make them qualified to do the work that they do. Do you belong to a professional association? So we've talked about that a little bit already. And in some cases, it's not just a professional association, but they have to also be registered with a college. A college is really about protecting the public, and you as the client, you are the public. So if they're registered with a college, that means that they're registered with a body that puts certain rules in place to protect you as a client seeking mental health care. Have you ever worked with other individuals facing similar concerns? So sometimes you're looking for help with a particular thing, and you're looking to see if somebody has, a background with LGBTQ, or maybe whether or not they worked with somebody who's had an eating disorder before, or things of that nature. So, whatever it is that you're looking for, it's okay to ask them if they have any experience in that area. How long have you been in practice? That's a perfectly reasonable question to ask. How how much experience they have overall. What are your beliefs about the use of medication? So this, again, you would also have to know what your own beliefs are and whether or not you like the idea of whatever your potential therapist would say. Do you keep clinical records, and can I see them at any time? So most people don't actually really want to see their records because there's no point to really seeing them. But if you actually did want to see them, anyone is supposed to be able to access their records whenever they want. It doesn't really do anybody much good, but you could if you wanted to see them. And then the last one I have here is, what are your fees and how and when do I pay? So this is a good thing for you to know. Most people will operate off of a system where you pay up front, and then you basically submit a receipt to your employer. There are a few occasions in which that doesn't happen, but there's only a couple of examples where that doesn't happen. So it's really important for you to kind of know what it is that you need to do, and whether or not, the person, say, takes a credit card, or whether they only operate in cash, or they use a check or something like that. It's important for you to kind of know like what it is that your expectations are. And there's a lot of different options out there. So, if you don't like the way that one counselor is doing something, you can just, see if there's somebody else. You can always come back to that counselor afterwards. So I hope you found this video informative. Obviously brings up a lot of other questions that people might have about how to go about understanding some of the things that you find on the internet when you're looking for a therapist or a counselor, because there's a lot of different designations out there, a lot of people with initials after their names, a lot of different colleges that people are affiliated with. And it's like, how the heck do insurance companies work? So if any of those things are of interest to you, please let me know in the comments below. I'd be happy to do a follow-up video on this topic if it is of interest to people. If you like the content that you're seeing, please subscribe. And if you need to get in touch with me, you can contact me at video@sarahghorsford.com, or you can find out more about me at my website, www.sarahghorsford.com. For now, please have fun looking for a therapist, because this could be one person who might end up helping you change your life. So good luck with your process. And until next time, please take care of yourself and each other.